It is 1:30, so we are going to get ourselves started on the governance SPC. So just for fun, in this room, who is reading or has read the Medicine Hat Municipal Inspection Report? And that's how you know you're in governance. When half the hands in the room go up going, that was awesome reading, and it wasn't about us. But really interesting recommendations. Well, I think we need to discuss it because I think a few of us have some OBRs coming out of that because there's some things we could look into. But that is not what is on our agenda for this afternoon. This afternoon we have, of course, our regular agenda. So we will start with a roll call. If you wouldn't mind, Ms. City Clerk, to start with our roll call.
Absolutely. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel?
Here.
Councillor Middleton Hope?
Very apparent.
Councillor
Yes, I'm here.
Councillor Carlson?
Hello.
Councillor Crowson?
Here.
And then we also have Councillor Parker joining us online, and we have quorum.
Perfect. So we have our quorum. We will go with the acknowledgement statement, which I will remember to grab out now. The City of Lethbridge acknowledges that we are gathered on the lands of the Blackfoot people of the Canadian Plains and pays respect to the Blackfoot people past, present, and future while recognizing and respecting their cultural heritage, beliefs, and relationship to the land. The City of Lethbridge offers respect to the Métis and all who have lived on this land and made Lethbridge their home. So first thing we will look at is the agenda. We have 2 items on the agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Middleton Hope. Adoption of agenda. Be it resolved that the July 24th, 2025 agenda of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting be adopted as presented. Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. It appears that we have, Madam Clerk, we have the one motion that will be brought forward. That's an addition.
It's not an addition. It's just something that can be suggested at the time of the motion being made, so the agenda can go ahead as
Okay, good.
suggested.
And then do we have any other changes to the agenda? Good. Then I'll ask for the question to be called.
Question's been called. All in favor? And we have adopted our agenda. Move now to our consent agenda. I have a motion from Councillor Carlson. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee, 1, approve the minutes of the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting held on June 26, 2025, and authorize the Chair and City Clerk designate to sign the same. And 2, receive for information a status of directed resolutions for July 24, 2025. Councillor Carlson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I reviewed everything. I trust my colleagues did. If there's any questions, I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? And the consent agenda passes as well. So now that moves us on to the agenda. And the first is a presentation by Christine Light, Board Chair, Lethbridge School Division, around the feasibility of formalizing the Joint Committee as a committee of council. I think our titles are getting even longer, but yeah. Ms. Light, welcome, and I hope you had a good weekend and everything. So please come on up. We'll make sure your mic gets turned on, and we'll have a conversation around the documents you sent us and continuing conversation around how that committee will function and work. So,
push anything for
nope,
this?
you've got a red light now. You're all good to go.
Awesome.
Our
Thank
amazing City Clerk's Department control
Your mics
everything.
are different than our mics, and it's all great. Yes.
So please tell us what you've been working on and where you are at it.
Okay, well, thank you for allowing me to sit at your table this afternoon, on this July afternoon. And today I am coming to present on behalf of the 3 school boards within our city, Lethbridge School Division, Holy Spirit School Division, Holy Spirit Catholic School Division, and Franco-Sud. And together we represent over 16,500 students and over 1,500 staff members, along with connected family and community members. And I'm speaking to the motion from the Governance SPC meeting of March 11th, where in that motion on number 2 is request that committee investigate the feasibility of formalization of the Joint Committee as a committee of council. Sorry, I'm still in summer mode in my brain. Through the development of a proposed mandate and governance structure, and assessment of the potential costs and resource implications associated with formalization. And here I am reporting back to you. So thank you for having me. So first I'll start with the development of a proposed mandate and governance structure. Following the March 11th meeting, the Joint City School Boards Committee met on April the 2nd, and at that meeting a subcommittee was formed with myself, Trustee Tricia Doherty from Holy Spirit School Division, as well as Councillor Jen Schmidt-Rempel. And together we met to form an updated terms of reference to really reflect what we want to move forward that we believe is a more structured and purposeful mandate. And so that was one of the documents I had sent to you, and you have that before you. This is certainly more robust in the purpose and direction that we would like to take as a committee. I didn't send you the original terms of reference. My apologies for that. Needless to say, the mandate was one sentence and support was one sentence. It was very basic. So as you can see, our purpose is extended to the Joint Committee of the City of Lethbridge and Lethbridge School Boards is established to strengthen collaboration, alignment, and mutual understanding between the municipality and school divisions. The committee will focus on shared governance priorities, joint advocacy efforts, and the cultivation of strong, effective work relationships that serve the community's best interests, especially children, youth, and families. And I'm certainly not going to read through this document. You've all been able to read it. But when you look through the mandate and responsibilities, we have that in 3 sections. We have governance alignment, which we felt was really this was really important. It's important that members don't come to a council committee really to say it basically to dump on council. That's not what we want. We don't want this to become a complaint center. I think it's important that we remember our high-level role. We remember our responsibility and our duty. We keep things high level. And really what we want to do is we want to work together as governors within the City of Lethbridge to advocate not just for school boards on behalf of school boards, but on behalf of the City of Lethbridge as well. Advocacy and joint initiatives, developing and promoting unified positions. That's certainly something that we've been working on over the past year, is talking about what are those items, what are those topics and areas where we can be working together as we engage our provincial government, as well as relationship building and communication, fostering respectful, transparent, consistent dialogue between elected officials. That's important. We know our administrative teams have a strong relationship with City of Lethbridge administration. We believe it's also important for the governing members of school boards to have that relationship with the city governing members as well. And I think building mutual understanding of each other, organization roles, responsibilities, and constraints. Context is really important. And so as we're advocating for our city, as we're advocating for our schools and our division, and we're advocating for the needs in the broader City of Lethbridge, as you are advocating for our city, as you are advocating for our school divisions, because we are part of that community, it's really important that everybody has a clear sense of what the context is, and we can work together to come with a unified message, which I do believe brings strength. So moving on through the terms of reference, we have the makeup of the committee is before you. One thing that we did put is administrative staff of City Council and the respective school boards may attend in advisory roles as needed. I know there was certainly conversation of do we need to utilize the time of our staff when they're already over capacity? And we don't want to unnecessarily do that. And so we added the as needed portion. Regarding chairing and administration, this is still an area that we need a little bit more understanding of, or clarity of, I should say. As it's written, it says a liaison from the host organization will undertake the responsibility to provide administrative support for the committee. And then it outlines what the support includes. In my email conversations with David Sarsfield, City Clerk, he did state that all administrative responsibilities must lie with the city of Lethbridge, if it is a formalized committee. So I would still like to explore if there can be work done and it passed through the city staff, or if city staff do need to perform all of the tasks. And then the rest of the report is before you. The second part, B, assessment of the potential costs and resource implications associated with formalization. In my emails with Mr. Sarsfield, we've been emailing since the beginning of March, and I did request a breakdown of the costs. He let me know the items that require cost, and those are before you in your list. And then I requested a specific breakdown. And so these figures are based on the salary of a senior clerk, the number of meetings per year as proposed, which was 6, and how a typical committee of council currently functions. And so as you can see, the costs, preparation of the agenda is $7,680 for the year. Preparation and distribution of minutes after the meeting is $5,760 for the year. Streaming is non-applicable. Involvement of senior staff in a meeting is unknown. And attendance of the clerk's office staff is $1,920. Researching, responding to inquiries and polling members is $7,680. Consultation with city clerk on matters is $1,419. And a counselor at attendance at meetings is unknown. And it's priceless, really priceless. And so that total comes to just below $25,000. And so when we look at this information and we have the conversation of, is it feasible to request that the city formalize this as a city of council? I would say yes, it is feasible. It is not the structure that was significantly burdensome. It was, I think, the purpose and the mandate of the committee that really needed to be realigned. Sorry, Councillor Crowson, do I have 5 minutes or is this just open? I'm just curious how this is working today.
We normally do set 5 minutes, but since we are having a conversation,
Oh, sure.
I don't think any of my colleagues are going to mind.
Okay.
So please continue.
Oh, perfect. Thank you. I just wanted to make sure I didn't rush through things needlessly. Yeah, so regarding the feasibility, I think the work that really needed to happen was the terms of reference and the purpose of this. And over the past year, we have seen some really positive momentum within this committee. And I think that the call to disband was alarming and unwelcome. But I think what it did is it really regrounded us in seeking out what is the purpose and how is it efficient, how is it respectful of staff time, and how can we be productive as a committee to move forward the vision of school divisions as well as the vision of city councilors. Regarding the cost, I'm still not quite, I know I received these figures and the breakdown based on city clerk's salary. I did ask the question of, is this something that there would be an expectation for school divisions to also contribute to? And I haven't received response, and that's fine. I know Mr. Sarsfield has been taken off of everything and he's working hard on elections, and so I acknowledge and I thank him for that hard work that he is doing right now. And so when I look at the numbers, I actually don't necessarily see it as an additional cost to what is already in our budgets, but a reflection of the time commitment. And so because of that, I think it's really important that, again, that we honor the time of the staff members and the governors coming to attend and really ensure that it is an efficient and purposeful meeting. And I do know in our January 29th joint committee, just in conversation when we were discussing the possibility of organizations sharing the administrative burden, before we were made aware that if it was to be mandated or formalized as a city, that only the city could take care of that, it was expressed that it really wasn't a cumbersome job to put the agendas together or to send the minutes out. Does anybody have any questions so far?
We'll let you finish up and,
Okay.
and then we'll ask questions. Because we also have to see, I know there's no one from the public here, but we also
sure.
have to ask the public.
Okay, certainly. Thank you. I'm almost done. So improvements that we've seen to the committee. As I've said before, this has been really a positive regrounding year for this committee, one of the things that we have put on the agenda as a standing item are joint or advocacy issues. And I know that following, I believe it was our January meeting, February 2nd, council was forwarded the report from our committee meeting, and there was a list of advocacy items, board advocacy items that were submitted, and these included cost of elections, carbon tax, transportation solutions, early learning, refugees, as well as FCSS advocacy to the provincial government for more funding for our community. And I think the work that we have done over the past year has really guided us to the terms of reference that are before you. We really want to ensure that we are grounded in the original intent of what I believe is the original intent of what this committee was formed to do. And I think to be able to discuss the joint benefits and the joint advocacy needs, because certainly in our communication circles as well as your communication circles, we benefit each other and we benefit the city of Lethbridge when we work together. Regarding why it is important, I think, that this committee be formalized as council. I think it can be asked, and it has been asked of me, why don't the school boards just form this committee? Would it not be easier? And yes, we could certainly do that. Yes, we can certainly do that. I do need to say that the recommendation and even consideration to disband the committee, I think, overlooked the critical importance of our partnership, and that voice has come from the city. And the collaboration between Lethbridge School Division, Holy Spirit, Franco-Sud, and the city of Lethbridge is integral to a thriving community, and that's something that we all want. In the motion that I'm speaking to in part 1, it says that this committee is a key governance and collaborative mechanism, and that is a motion that council agreed with. It is a motion that council passed, and so I can only come to the conclusion that council believes that this committee is a key governance and collaborative mechanism, and that there is value seen in this committee. And I would encourage council to continue to move forward, continue to lend your voice in supporting this committee through the agreement to formalize this as a committee of council through which the school boards can collaborate with you. And in doing so, we can ensure operational and long-term success inclusive of community growth and the economic development of Lethbridge. We can continue to share vision, strategies, and insights that guide the path forward. And you know, we are, as the city of Lethbridge, known as a collaborative and to have collaborative and innovative spirit. I think Team Lethbridge is one positive example of that I can speak to, where there is strength in joint advocacy, and we're often acknowledged as a leader of collaborative work. And so I certainly don't want, and the board certainly don't want, and I certainly hope you don't want this image to erode, but rather to grow. And so in doing so, we certainly hope that you would choose to continue to move forward with this with us in a formalized committee. Thank you.
Thank you. Before I do go to questions, I mean, let's be clear that we're talking about a mechanism, not that whatever we choose, that there would not be conversation. I think everybody here agrees that we will continue to work together, but this is about the format. And a committee of council is something that established under the MGA is a very specific thing. It needs a bylaw. It does need to be run by the city clerk's department in the agenda and stuff. And so we have other options when we talk about other options. Like when we assign 2 of our members to Green Acres, for example. That is their committee, but we have people who go there and have the same conversations that is happening around this committee, but then bring that information back. And that way Green Acres runs that committee, so we don't have to have a bylaw. So this is all about mechanism today. It is not about value, because I don't think anybody in this room doubts that there is a value to working together, doubts that there is a value. It's how best to do that. And when a committee of council is set up, it becomes a very formal thing that sometimes people think that's the right mechanism, but sometimes the formality of it makes you wonder if it really is. So I just want to make sure we're focused on the mechanism, not the value, because I don't think anybody is questioning that we 4 groups need to work together. Now, first, I'm just going to ask this because it is required. Anyone in the audience would like to say anything on this matter? I know, Nick, we're all looking at you again, but that's the only one there. As there's nobody in the audience, we will move to questions from council. And I have first in the queue, Councillor Middleton Hope. Please go right ahead.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I think the first question that I have, although I have several, speaks to the jurisdiction of any such proposed committee. We have a group of organizations here that actually represent not only city schools, but also schools in the surrounding region under the Franco Sud School Board, as well as the Holy Spirit Catholic School Board. So I did not read anywhere in here where there was collaboration with any other entity outside the city of Lethbridge. So I'm wondering if you could perhaps respond to that.
Oh, certainly. The Holy Spirit and Franco Sud, as you said, do represent students outside of the city boundary. Those trustees participating in this committee are the trustees representative of Lethbridge students. Our collaboration with Holy Spirit in their rural areas, as well as Franco Sud, happen through our organization, and there is other collaboration that happens and discussion that happens with them. That would happen at our Zone 6 meetings. Zone 6 for our division is south of Calgary, all the way to the BC border, the Saskatchewan border, and the Montana border. And so we collaborate once a month through our zone meetings there. And then we also collaborate through Alberta School Board Association as well. Is that what you were asking? Is that what you were meaning?
Well, I understand where their jurisdiction lies.
Yeah.
My concern is the city of Lethbridge is being asked to create a committee, or a council is, and our administration would be responsible for running this committee. The cost would be absorbed by the city of Lethbridge. I'm not sure how the other school boards and or schools would participate in that. I don't see that.
In the sharing of the cost,
Oh, partly, yeah.
certainly. I know.
Sharing of the cost, decision-making, functionality of the committee, so
Yeah.
forth.
I would see the sharing of the cost. There's cost in administrative staff attending. We would have administrative staff attending as needed. I think the cost that would be then laid on the city, and we would have to explore that, I don't know the answer to this, would be if that meeting then has to be held in this room. Currently, it is shared amongst the organizations, and throughout the year, each organization has a turn hosting the meeting, and as such, Mr. Sarsfield has always provided the administrative support, but we house it within our divisions.
I understand that we've always provided that support, and that it's, and the current mechanism, the way in which it works currently, I understand that, but you're proposing going forward where the city bears the responsibility for at the administration of this committee, the costs of this committee, and yet there are, as I've indicated, there are school boards, or the school boards have responsibilities that are outside the jurisdiction, towns and cities outside the city of Lethbridge. So have you thought in terms of how that might be organized better, or how it might be more equitable in terms of the distribution of costs with other organizations or other schools and so forth within your school boards?
I think the conversation around the distribution of costs comes back to my question that stands. I know that around the amounts that have been given within the document that I gave you, that I have read out with the cost of those, I'm not sure what those costs will be there regardless of where it's hosted. If there's a city clerk present, that cost would be there, right? And it's not I think the challenge of the communication of costs, and I will say this respectfully, I think the challenge of the communication of costs, I think the unintended consequence is that there could be an idea that there is an additional cost to this committee. But I think these costs are embedded in the salaries of our employees. So if I ask my superintendent to attend, that is part of the cost of that committee, as it would be any meeting that I would have with my superintendent. I think the fluctuation that we would experience would be, are we then able to host in our school division offices, or do they all need to be here within this room? And if they're within this room, what is that cost? And what is the additional cost to taxpayers? And so to me, I think the cost is reflective of time, not
Well, you're suggesting that it's soft
additional.
costs, and I understand that,
Yeah.
but there's a direct cost to our administration in terms of
Right.
the preparation of the agenda, the preparation and distribution of minutes. That's all hosted by us.
The preparation of the agenda is everyone submits their agenda items. The city clerk collates the information and sends it out. It
Okay.
is not burdensome.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not getting an answer to my question.
Oh, I'm sorry
It's
then.
okay.
Okay.
I understand what you're trying to do, and I'm not disputing it. I'm just
Sure.
simply saying, if we're looking at this from an equitable perspective,
Mm-hmm.
is there a different way to examine this in terms of something other than the city of Lethbridge absorbing all the cost? If we haven't thought through that, and maybe my colleagues have, that were part of this discussion, have some other strategies in mind, I'd be certainly willing to listen to those. But at this point, I don't hear any of that. So
Okay.
I'm going to leave that question for
Sure.
now. And if Councillor Schmidt-Rempel wants to, who was a part of this group, wants to respond to that at some point, that's up to her. One other question that I have before I'll cede the floor to my colleagues is, so what are other cities' experience? So what's Calgary doing, Red Deer, Grand Prairie, Medicine Hat, those size cities, what are they doing in terms of the relationship with their school boards?
I know that there are not many, I don't know any other municipality that has an established joint committee with their city.
All right.
I know that in Calgary, they will call on meetings when needed, is what they do, but they don't have an established committee.
And do you know the reason why?
I do not,
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Okay.
but I can
Wouldn't be
explore
appropriate
that,
to speculate
absolutely.
then.
Yeah,
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
of course.
I'll speculate, maybe they're just not as good as Lethbridge. Okay, that's just my own speculation, though. All right, Councillor Carlson, you're next in queue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thank you, Ms. Late, for the presentation and the information. I notice I was left off on some of the communications, so I'm just getting it now, unfortunately. One of the questions I had is there are, as our chair has mentioned, there are hoops and hurdles that we have to stick by. Why is the push to be a committee of council when we have this forum already in existence? School boards could come here to any governance meeting at any time, and we could have these chats. I'm just wondering, why go one route and not just utilize the tools that are already there?
And I have to say, I'm appreciating this extended chat and not being limited to a 5-minute timeline. And I think it's a lot of it is the 5-minute timeline provides a pretty significant barrier. I can't imagine presenting and having this conversation within 5 minutes and getting the full context of the conversation and giving the information. And so I think I find this quite limiting. I appreciate that this is a committee where you want community members to gather and they can apply to speak for 5 minutes, and should there be questions, there can be questions. I think with an established committee, there's great opportunity for lengthier conversation. Our committee meetings are typically 2 hours. Sometimes they finish early, which is always a win if they can. But it allows for just greater conversation on more issues, and just to be able, I guess, a less formalized conversation, and developing strategies to move forward. And I think as we've moved through this year, we've refocused on our, as I've said, we've refocused on our advocacy items. And moving into next year, one of the pieces of this terms of reference is really coming together and creating a collaborative movement forward where we can approach the government on some of the issues that we share. And certainly those are conversations that would benefit more greatly with a joint committee structure rather than coming to the SPC, I believe, the boards believe. But I'm willing to hear your perspective on that as well.
Thank you for that. And I do understand that past meetings, I think there was 2 a year, were, when they happened, could be up to 2 hours. But I also understood that most of that was administrative in nature. And so I'm just, perhaps this forum is the one that we could talk about governance and advocacy rather than that. But I've got no further questions. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Yet. Oh, sorry. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much, Ms. Light, for bringing this forward. I did take part in a discussion with Ms. Light early in January when we talked about what possible terms of reference might look like, what we might want to change, that sort of thing. So what you are seeing here today is in part some of that work, some suggestions of how we can move this forward and what might be some best mechanisms that we could look at. So thank you very much. And I will say that since the suggestion to disband this committee did come forward, it did change the way the committee talked and the way the meetings went. I attended committee meetings early on. I know Councillor Croson, you attended some of the committee meetings about midway through, and then I came back on towards the end of the term. And there was a significant difference in conversations and the types of conversations. And we were very much talking about the advocacy and how we can be working together. And there was less about the function and organization, more about the governance, which is where we really need to be focusing that work, the governance to governance models. And I think that's what we're really speaking towards. We may not have gotten here, and I'm not getting into debate because I do have a question. We may not have gotten to where we want to be in the mechanism yet, and I would propose, and I do have a motion coming up that proposes we maybe look at this a little bit further and look at this after the election, because I don't think we're going to have an opportunity to have this done within that November 3rd timeline. But the question I do have, and this is to the city manager designate, is it possible that we can explore cost sharing with the 3 other organizations? Are we limited to what looks like a $25,000 burden on the city of Lethbridge to run this? Can we not get the 4 organizations in a room to talk about and look at what a cost sharing mechanism might look like, or even space sharing, resources, all that other? It might look different from what a regular committee of council might look like, but why can we have that conversation?
So I'll look to clerk staff here, but I don't see any reason we can't explore it. I'm looking to clerks and any of the analysis they might have done already that I'm not in the loop on.
Thank you.
Yeah, so the costs we gave, that's our time, right?
Yeah.
So, and committees of council are clerked by our office because, you know, we work for council and support council and the city manager, so we're all communicating. So joint committees are different animals. So we're open to whatever council wants. We could make whatever work. But yeah, we could definitely look at some cost sharing, absolutely.
Because I think that is one of the biggest barriers we seem to be having, is how much this committee is costing us. So maybe it is taking a step back and taking a look at what that cost sharing mechanism might look like, and then also making sure we are using the appropriate mechanism. But I think this is a good discussion starting point. I think there needs to be more discussions to find out and for us to get to exactly where we want to be. And I'll step out for now. Thank you.
Okay, we're going to move now online to Councillor Parker. The floor is yours right now. Hopefully you can hear us, and hopefully we can hear you. Fine.
Oh, I can. Can you hear me okay?
Go right ahead.
Perfect. Well, first of all, thank you, Christine, for coming forward. I think, first of all, I think a lot of these questions that members of council or members of the committee, actually council as well, are asking are based around, they don't understand what this committee is all about. And with the exception of Jen, Councillor Smith-Rempel, who sits on the committee with me, and I do believe in the past, Councillor Blaine Higgins sat on it with me, Councillor Joe Morrow. The one common theme is I've been on this committee for probably 15 years, and you have to understand, I want you to kind of close your eyes and visualize what this committee looks like when in regards to how it's set up. You're in a room, let's say, for example, we'll say the call cell phone tower being on site was kind of a controversial thing. A lot of parents were concerned about it. They didn't know what, the science behind. They were scared about the radio waves, whatever. It's really irrelevant the way exactly. But the point is, we came together and we had people from our staff at that time, Michael Kelly, Lethbridge Land, who helped facilitate a new location. We talk about numerous things around that table. So to have the school boards come to this committee really doesn't make sense. This body that we've been doing for 15, 20 years, they talk about things, everything from school nutrition, nutrition within our facilities, our ice rinks, so on. They talk about things that affect everyone. And we represent the students, we represent the parents, we represent the staff. And so that's why we've had this committee. And so I think the only reason why we're at this table is because we really never formalized something as a committee of council. Now, I don't want to get tangled in the weeds of a $25,000 cost. If there's value to this committee, we'll find a way to make it affordable. But I do believe from my years, and I'll ask maybe Mayor Higgin, because I see he's online. I know he's probably traveling right now, but this committee's had huge values. So for it to be disbanded and everything to be communicated through the governance, even though I do appreciate what governance does, I think it's important that people like Councillor Middleton Hope, yourself, Madam Chairman, that you actually sit in on one of those meetings to see how it actually works. Because until you're really not in the arena, if you're not in the arena, it's hard to understand how it really works. It's just like if a person doesn't understand how council works, until you get into the arena, then you understand how it works and the significance of the roles. So that's my perspective. Not debating, but I think it's important you understand what really happens at this joint board meeting. And it's 3 times a year. And sometimes if an issue comes over the wall, we will have a special meeting if needed. So we've just had a really good relationship. We've had both superintendents, we've had our staff from everything from infrastructure services, Lethbridge Land, Maureen Gehring Development Services. They've been there as needed on an ad hoc basis when an issue affects all parties. So that's just my 2 cents. I just wanted to make sure that was said. There's a huge value in this committee. I just don't want us to get tied up on the 25,000 right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Parker. Okay, moving further in the queue, Councillor Middleton Hope, back to you, please.
Thank you. And to Councillor Parker, I think you've overplayed it somewhat, that Councillor Crowson and I are talking through our hats as if we don't know what we're talking about. I would suggest that we have certainly a keen understanding for what needs to be done as a part of this council. And so thank you for suggesting that I attend some of these meetings. I have met with both school boards on more than one occasion, particularly when we were talking about the need to draft legislation for the province to allow for funding not to be allocated to setting up the acquisition of a school. Plus, we talked about the new legislation that the province was bringing in that would talk in terms of providing for funding for badly needed schools in the district. So I disagree with Councillor Parker saying that we don't know what we're talking about. I think we do. Beyond that, he indicated that, or Councillor Parker, you indicated that you represent, or the committee represents schools, students, and parents. Is that the way you see it? That you represent schools, parents, and teachers?
Oh, yes.
Yeah.
Well, I think, to answer your question, and you know what, I stand by my comments, and we're not getting into debate, but I appreciate the work that you do. Am I still there?
Yeah, go ahead and finish your statement, but again, we're trying not to debate.
No, I'm not debating, but I want to make sure. What you need to understand here is you don't understand because you've never been in those meetings of the good work and the kind of discussion and how sometimes it's quite organic. That's what I'm saying. And so it's important that that be noted. And I stand by those comments. And so, what was your question again, Councilor Milton Hope? I apologize.
I don't think there was a question yet expressed, but Councillor Middleton, Hope, you can go ahead with your question.
Yeah. So are there, I guess there's a couple of questions then. It'll go to our administration. So are there any other options? I know that we've explored options in the past. We've talked about what might be used going forward. How does that affect our administration? Are there better options available out there? Have we done sufficient research to determine whether this is the best option available to us? It doesn't sound like we have. So that was a question and a rhetorical question.
Councillor Middleton Hope, so we did do our review on the BCCs. There are other options, like the school has a committee. It's an external committee like others, and they can have councillors be appointed on that committee, and they would lead it, run it, etc. We could research other municipalities, see what they do, but we haven't found that there's like a joint city, joint school committee in some of the municipalities that we have looked at.
Okay, what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to understand the value. If we are doing things that other communities don't do, why? If other communities are doing similar things to what we're doing, are there opportunities to learn from it? If we're doing something that is novel, then okay, I'm certainly prepared to take a look at it. The cost is secondary. Let's not get caught up in the cost of spending $25,000, mostly soft costs. What my question in regards to the costing was, is there an opportunity there to bring others in to offset some of those costs, offset some of the use of city clerks? There's a number of schools in the county, so why isn't the county involved in this as well? So that's why I'm asking these types of questions. I don't need an answer today. I presume that we'll have an answer by the time this gets to council. So if you're okay with that, then we can move on, and I'll let other members of the subcommittee ask questions of you. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Middleton Hope. Back to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
And I'm just looking for, because Ms. Light made a really good comment about, she made several good comments about it, but that this committee is a key governance and collaborative mechanism. The value is seen in that committee simply from the fact that we're allowed to, we come together to share vision, strategies, and thought. The city of Lethbridge is known, not the city of Lethbridge corporately, but the city of Lethbridge, small c, its residents are known, and the city of Lethbridge corporately, yes, but small c residents are known to have a collaborative and innovative spirit. And this certainly reflects that. And there is strength in our joint advocacy and collaborative work. Councillor Middleton Hope, you spoke to it right there when you talked about bringing forward the advocacy motion of having the province lay out initial construction costs. I mean, that is part of what this committee does. So it's a great committee that proves value time after time. I do think that it lost its way for a while, but I think that we are in a position now that we could sit down in the fall after the election when we have all the new trustees, we have the new council, we can have a conversation about what this committee might look like, and then we can also talk about what that mechanism might look like as well. Is it a committee of council? Does it maybe need to be a committee of the school boards? But let's have that conversation together, and then we can include that cost sharing in there as well. We can have one overarching conversation about what that all looks like.
As I'm listening, I'm hearing one of the things that is important is the informality. You don't want something as formal as this in the committee. The location, again, not in council chambers. Some of these things I think we need to start jotting down as the pros and cons, and that will help decide the mechanism. Because again, in my mind, this has nothing to do with value. Even the conversation we had with all the committees, it wasn't the value, it was where do they best fit. If they are better under administrative, they do their job better there. If they are better under a committee of council, they do their job better there. Others are better as external committees. So again, this is not about whether we should continue doing advocacy and all these things. It's about where do you fit into a committee so that all the things you want to achieve can be easily done at that committee level. When you come to a committee of council, even to change the membership is a bylaw change. Like, we know the difficulty of creating a committee of council, so it might be one of the reasons that we're going, maybe it sounds like it has cachet, but it can be a lot of work to create. And so that's where you're getting the pushback is, what is the right mechanism? And a committee of council sounds like that's how you get council on it, but you can get council on many other types of committees. You can get external committees, you can get joint committees, and that's what we have with the county. It's a joint committee. And that does switch back and forth, but it's not a committee of council. And so that's when we talk mechanism. I think what we also need to do, and maybe we can add it to our proposal, is to give you a list of the potential mechanisms we're talking about, so that when we say, we're talking a joint committee, we can give you an example and how it works. So, because I think sometimes we're talking our gobbledygook, and we might not be explaining well about why we're saying, no, we think this mechanism, because I don't think we've explained it well. But again, my conversation is nothing about the value. I see the value is incredibly important. I just want to fit you into the right mechanism so what you want to achieve can be achieved. But now we'll move to Councillor Carlson. Oh, did I stop your comment?
Respond, is
Yes,
that
you can.
okay? Thank you. I apologize. Sorry, Councillor Carlson. I appreciate that. And I know I just want to express that in our conversations as a subcommittee and as a committee, we've also been talking about the mechanism, haven't used that phraseology, but we've been talking about the mechanism and what it can look like. And in my conversation with the city clerk's office, I did ask for do we have the ability to, I didn't say share costs, but share administrative roles. That's how I phrased this. And it was under a committee of council. So perhaps I'm misusing committee of council versus joint committee.
A joint
So
committee or
certainly-
something else, another mechanism, and
Yeah.
that might be the thing. We might need to give you our list of how we talk about things, just so we're having the same
That
conversation.
could be very helpful, actually. So I do appreciate the openness to discussing what it could look like as a joint committee and what things can happen, because we're certainly more than willing to share the cost of admin support. We're willing, it was part of our proposal, and as I presented it as the committee of council, the answer was no. But if that can be amended under a joint committee, then that's certainly worth exploring and continuing to.
Because like I said, external
to have
committees, joint
discussion on.
committees of council, they all
Yeah.
have different roles. And yeah, it's about finding the right one. And we will go now to Councillor Carlson. 3 minutes later than I said, but that's.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And most of what our chair was talking about was what I was going to sort of discuss. But I guess the question I have is, hearing about what a committee of council is, a joint committee, what is the reticence to the school boards having their own committee, an external committee, that then they invite members of council to attend? And then if there's issues based, there's this forum, which committees can be fairly relaxed, as you can see. There is just sort of a place to come and chat. So what would be the reticence in just going off, starting your own external committee and members of council to attend?
Well, as I'll speak to it again. I spoke to it briefly before. I think from the school board's perspective, when the recommendation came, it'll be very frank, when the recommendation came to disband this committee, this is the only committee that was recommended to disband completely, is my understanding. It's the only one that had that word, disband.
I'm pretty sure there were others, but we got rid of many committees.
Regardless.
And but it is a point that I'd like to make, that we keep talking about soft costs. And, it's only 25,000, but it's already there. Every time we add a committee, those soft costs appear, and they're only soft until you run out of capacity, and then you have to hire other staff. I want to remind people that it's not just free. Okay? So anyways, I'm good.
That was more abrupt than I was expecting you to be, Councillor Carlson. But yes, that is what I see as the advantage of SPC. These are where we can have conversations and discussions. We have rules, but we do push them around a bit. All right, I don't see anyone else in the queue, and we do have a motion. I did suggest a change, but that was just more of a suggestion. The motion is Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, so you can take that suggestion as part of the motion or not. I will read what we have now, and then that is only there to start the conversation. Feasibility of formalizing the joint committee as a committee of council. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee refer the matter and the documents presented by Ms. Light to the Joint Committee of the City of Lethbridge. I see we already are actually a joint committee, and Lethbridge School Boards to have them provide the following. 1, the feasibility of formalizing the joint committee as a committee of council. 2, a proposed mandate and governance structure. And 3, potential costs and resource implications associated with formalization, along with formal approval from the committee for recommendation to the Governance Standing Policy Committee meeting on,
It's going to need to be in Q1 or 2 of 2026.
shall we say Q2, and if they're earlier, that's fine. In Q2 of 2026 for council's consideration of the, for Q2, for governance consideration. We'd send it to governance back first. Did that gobbledygook make sense?
To the Governance Committee standing meeting.
They're just making the changes. And what I recommended is, because we have very specific terms when we talk committee of council, right? That is a bylaw, that is a very thing. There are other ways, and I do suggest that we basically, maybe before they have this conversation, give them the handout of what our descriptions of various councils would be. I'm assuming Ms. Hilford, you probably have a description already of different committees that we could hand to this group, so that when we say committee of council, they know what we mean, vice versa. Is that possible? Okay, yeah, for some reason. Can somebody make sure it's, okay. Just a second here.
Thank you. So we do have different definitions for different committees. We can definitely provide that.
So we're all talking on the same page.
Yes.
Again, there is no value difference between anyone. It is how they work and if they best suit the need to get the job done. Okay, so yeah, every committee is important. It's just we try to slot you in where you're best suited. Okay, have the changes been made appropriate to what you were discussing, Councillor? Okay, so then that is there. Has everybody had a chance to read it and know what we will be discussing? So we'll turn it over then for debate to Councillor Schmidt-Rempel.
Thank you very much, and thank you very much to my colleagues for the discussion today. Certainly, this was a starting point for discussion because we know that there is still more work to be done here. Again, if we can get the correct mechanism to the school boards so that they can have a discussion about what they may want to see, and then bring that back, we can certainly move forward to make sure that we are fulfilling the needs most appropriately to these three groups in our community. Four groups in our community, including us. Yes.
Okay, do we have any debate? We do. Councillor Middleton Hope, please go ahead.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, I'm prepared to support the motion as it stands now. I would ask Ms. Light to conduct some of that research that we were talking about in terms of what other school boards and other municipalities, what kind of a relationship have they formed? Is there something to be learned from them that we can perhaps incorporate into any structure that might be going forward? If not, if we are truly trailblazers, I can't imagine that we are in this context, but if we are, then great. Be prepared to respectfully provide whatever structure we create, assuming that we do, to other school boards and other municipalities. So thank you.
Okay, back to you, Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, or do you just want to call the question?
I'll call for the vote.
Okay, question's been called. All in favor? And opposed? So that is 3-1. Okay. Well, thank you, Ms. Light, for coming in on an afternoon in summer. Hopefully you have more relaxing plans than this. Oh, good. Thank you. And if you want to stay, we're going to now talk about the pay-as-you-go policy and better ways to manage our finances, thanks to Mr. Matthews.
Well, that's very exciting. Thank you all. Take care.
May not be exciting, but absolutely necessary, and we're glad to have it on the agenda, Mr. Matthews. And you do have a presentation on the new proposed CC 78 pay-as-you-go policy, so we'll hand it over to Mr. Matthews.
Thank you, members of Governance SBC and the chair. I'll first, thanks for having me here today. So just give me a bit of background on this particular policy you see before you. So back earlier, I think it was this year, Councillor Carlson, or maybe even last year, Carlson came forward with an official business motion to have a pay-as-you-go policy for utility projects. So I'll walk you through the policy in itself that's before you today. The policy includes both utility and taxation components. So I'll just give you a walkthrough of this. Next slide, please. So the City of Lethbridge approved a pay-as-you-go program on April 22nd, 1991, which was fully implemented in 1994. The current pay-as-you-go program is part of the operating budget and helps fund the costs of reoccurring tax-supported capital projects, and from which a portion of money is held in reserve to make debt payments for tax-supported capital projects. While the pay-as-you-go program has been in place for many years, for tax side that is, a policy has not been implemented. Back in December of 2024, there's the date, City Council directed administration to draft a policy to implement a pay-as-you-go program to fund utility-supported capital projects for the future. Next slide. The pay-as-you-go policy, CC 78, outlines the City of Lethbridge standards for maintaining the pay-as-you-go program, ensuring long-term viability through strong financial leadership and planning. Some benefits of the pay-as-you-go program includes affordability, minimizing interest charges for future budgets, greater flexibility provided in future operating budgets, and sound financial planning. Next slide. The original pay-as-you-go program was just for taxation, as I've noted, and we have now included the utility supported category in this program. As for the pay-as-you-go taxation supported program, this subcategory of the current pay-as-you-go program for tax-supported projects includes and is funded from the operating budget. This plan helps to fund the cost of reoccurring or small-scale capital projects, and from which a portion of the funds is held in a taxation reserve. To make debt payments for tax-supported projects, as well as to make debt payments for tax-supported projects. The current pay-as-you-go program is increased annually by 0.15% of the municipal tax levy as approved by City Council resolution on July 9th, 2007. The current program will not change with this policy. All pay-as-you-go transactions and funding requirements will need to be approved either through the annual operating or capital budget process or by City Council resolution. The pay-as-you-go utility supported program, this subcategory of this new addition, or is the new addition to the pay-as-you-go program that is for utility supported projects, and it will be included in future operating budgets. This plan will help to fund future capital projects, include major rehabilitation or upgrades to existing assets and emergency requirements to support corporate or regulatory priorities and strategic plans. A portion of the funds will be held in a utility reserve to make debt payments for utility-supported projects. The utility portion of the future pay-as-you-go program will be identified and approved as part of the operating budget process and rate bylaw process, I should say. The pay-as-you-go utility program will be used to help fund water, wastewater, and waste and environment utility-funded capital projects. Next slide. I will now discuss the pay-as-you-go taxation program. The intent of the program was to be affordable, minimize interest charges in future budgets, provide for greater flexibility in future operating budgets on it, and provide the sound financial planning. This slide outlines the 2023 to 2026 operating budget for the pay-as-you-go taxation program. For the tax-supported projects. The pay-as-you-go taxation program is broken down to three main components, being debt payments, which are for external or internal borrowings for capital projects. And for example, in this regard, is for the police headquarters, Crossing Ice Complex, and Leisure Centre, or as we would know it today is the Cavendish Centre. Pay-as-you-go capital is funding allocated to the community, Section D or transportation capital projects in the CIP, and reserve transfers are used if the plan is over or under funded in any given year and is balanced through the major capital projects reserve. Next slide. So in this slide here, what it's discussing is the overall plan, and the intent of the program was, once again, to be affordable. Oh, there we go. It's coming up. I guess, yeah, just click right through all the graph here. We were overly... Yeah, it is one, keep on going, one more there. There we go, perfect. Yeah, thank you. I wasn't looking up apparently and noticed it was a blank page. So basically what you see before you on the slides is that the red line represents the total amount, including the operating budget for the pay-as-you-go plan. The 2025 budget amount is 14, in this regard, was $14,635,000, and is comprised of the, within the blue bars, funding allocated to transportation pay-as-you-go ongoing capital projects, those programs like for pathways, bridges, and lighting, and so forth. The green bars, funding allocated to the community pay-as-you-go projects. And as you can see on the slide, it's basically for the public art, parks, energy efficiency projects that we do each year. And the turquoise bar, that's the debt servicing component, which is the debt payments for capital projects. And if this plan is over or under any given year, is balanced through the major capital projects reserve. And as I mentioned, you'll see on the graph in there where starting in 2031, it starts to decline. That's where the loans start coming off for the Cavendish Centre, is for primarily the end of the tax-supported debt payments from the CIP anyways. Next slide. So on December 10th, 2024, City Council approved to repay the LD outstanding external loan to the province. That was approximately $17 million. This loan was paid by allocating approximately $7 million in city grant funding and $10 million from our MRSR, or municipal, let's say MRSR right now. I almost said Mill Rate Stabilization Reserve, which I did say. That's right. So I'll leave it there for right now because I'm having a brain drain on the actual name rate of here. It's not mill rate anymore. Municipal Revenue Sustainability Reserve. There we go. As an internal loan. City Council also approved an increase to the pay-as-you-go capacity by $1.2 million. That's why you see the red line jumping up there. So as part of that repayment of the funding that was borrowed from the province for the LD, to make those payments, $1.2 million, make the payments back to the reserve. So keeping in mind, the loan is paid off to the province. There is no loan to the province at all. The only portion now is the funding in the reserve, and repaying back to the reserve to make it whole again is actually coming through the pay-as-you-go program, and that was the additional $1.2 million that was added into it. What you'll see then is the white space at 2030 and 2031 actually gets larger inside there, and you can see that now with that internal payment back to our own reserve, it's actually coming down to zero in 2035, which is that other 10-year period. Next slide. Funding for the pay-as-you-go utility program we included in future operating budgets. And the pay-as-you-go utility program is also broken into three main components. It will have debt payments for external or internal borrowings for capital projects. It will also have the pay-as-you-go capital component and the reserve transfers as well. That we'll see inside of that one as well. They will all be funded through utility rates as well. So that's the main difference between the two sections, is that the historical pay-as-you-go was all tax supported. This will be utility supported and paid through utility rates on it. And with that, I believe we're at the last slide, which is the questions.
Thank you, Mr. Matthews. I am once again going to ask Mr. Cool if he'd like to represent the public and ask any questions. Okay, so we will go then to questions from the committee, starting with Councillor Middleton Hope.
Thank you, Madam Chair. A few questions for you, Mr. Matthews. First, and I'm sorry, because on the slides there's no numbers of the pages. It might be something to do in the future is to number the pages so that I can refer back to the page that we're looking for. But I have a question in regards to what does relatively small scale mean?
Yeah, thank you. That's some of the terminology that's been in the past. And so typically what it means is like when we're talking about the projects and programs as small areas of pathways or other areas. So it's not multi-million dollar projects historically. However, that is really subjective for council. So at different times as we're coming into CIP, it could be that we make a recommendation that we have extra funding inside of the reserve, and council could actually use that funding or the pay-as-you-go funding that goes into the reserve for those kind of fundings in a larger extent on a larger project. Historically, though, we're looking at things like small bridge maintenance projects. We're looking at park and pathways projects, those kind of things.
Yeah. Okay. Doesn't give me a whole lot of comfort, quite honestly. It would be nice if we said a small-scale project is under $1 million for the sake of argument, and a large-scale project is something that's over that.
We could very well change that inside of there, yeah.
I think it would give us some idea when we're talking about small scale what that actually means, because small scale 20 years ago may be different than it is today. How many such projects are being funded currently?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm just going to bring up one thing here. Bear with me. I've got it on my other screen. So within, if you looked inside the CIP binder for anybody that's following along at home, you would see that on page G4 or page, I'm not quite sure, through 276 of the CIP.
I see.
They have a pay-as-you-go transportation page, and they also have a pay-as-you-go community page on page 277 of that book. So in that there we have, it looks like 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, about 10 primary programs on the transportation side, and that looks at things like bikeways and pathways, accessibility improvements, railway rehabilitation programs, for example, that are in there. There's some specific ones too that are in there too. There's another, looks like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 other ones that are just one-off components that are within that CIP project area. Now keep in mind, some of those that's the whole 10-year window of the CIP window, not the 4-year approved window as well too. So for those last projects I was talking about, they come in different timing. When it comes to the community piece, there's 2, 4, 5 different ongoing programs. That includes the art acquisition program, the parks asset management program, the pathway system and connections, facility assessments and accessibility upgrades, and our energy efficiency assessments and upgrades that are ongoing programs that come out of the pay-as-you-go community side. There's also 3 within the approved window, which is Mountain View Cemetery irrigation, the school gymnasium upsizing, and the downtown 5th Street preliminary design work all came from those pay-as-you-go funds in those periods.
So about 18, it sounds like?
That's about
18
correct.
separate projects that we're actually working on at any given time?
Yeah, and as I mentioned, the first bit is programs, so they'd be separate little pieces. It could be like an intersection that's getting a mobility enhancement on it. So it's a pool of funding to do a bunch of work in transportation in that given year, and there'll be sub-projects. So 18 programs.
Primary projects?
And projects, yes.
Okay, all right. 2 last quick questions then. How many taxation reserves do we have, and do they function like a BAU?
So I will have to pull up another piece of document here to look at the number of reserves, but no, they don't. So a taxation reserve, the biggest one is the MRSR, obviously. The next biggest one would be our fleet reserve from those 2. We also have like an airport reserve, a cemetery reserve, and a number of others. What I would refer to anyone that wants to take a look at those is take a look at our unaudited report that's published on the city's webpage, and it has a detailed listing of all those reserves. Those reserves, unlike the BAU reserve that we talked about, I think the last committee on it, those ones are all council-approved reserves. What that means is that they are approved to start with, but there's council approval is required to take out any funding out of those or use of those funds. The difference on the other policy, what we had inside of there is that's delegated to the city manager, that process on the BAU side. So they're a little bit different in operation on it. And I do have, if you bear with me one second, I can tell you the total dollar value in reserves.
Because I think it's helpful for members of council to know where all the pockets of money are. Certainly, we have an understanding, at least I have an understanding for BAUs. These taxation reserves are new. I'm not familiar with those discussions in regards to taxation reserves. I thought that when we are surplus to budget, that those funds would either go back into the MRSR or go into a BAU account, but apparently we also have taxation reserves. They're very specific then.
Yeah, so council does have a policy in regards to reserves, and that outlines each one of them, and then also some of those actually have limits on them. So I think maybe it might be the terminology, Councilor Milner-Hope, in regards to how we're describing it on the pay-as-you-go side. So in the unaudited report, there is almost 124 million in as of December 31st in reserves. Now, not all of those are taxation. There's also a couple. There's a wastewater, water, and electric reserve in there as well too. But our total reserves, we do report that out every single year, both in our unaudited, actually in our September operating forecasts and our unaudited report, and also on our annual report financial statements, those reserves, and we actually give a detailed listing of those inside of there. But I think the difference is probably how it's conveyed inside the report. When we say reserve, what they were talking about financial reserve inside of the pay-as-you-go is actually the major capital projects reserve. So that's where those funding are going to. And that is the funds, that reserve has at December 31st, just over $19.6 million in it, and that's all geared towards either current allocations that council's approved for CIP or future allocations. So if not all the pay-as-you-go gets used, or if there's surpluses on the capital projects, they roll back into it. So these are publicly available, these values, and actually the amounts that are allocated out of it is probably just some the way we're communicating it inside of there.
Thank you, and I'll ask my last question before.
Actually, can we move on? Not because your questions are important, but I know city manager needs to take off at 3, so I'd like to hear from the other two with questions, so that when he takes off, he's heard everybody's questions. Would that be?
Yeah, I'll just ask Councillor Carlson then to ask my question. Sure. In regards to utility rates, are they going up? Yes. Okay, thanks.
Okay.
I knew I could count on you.
Councillor Carlson, go right ahead.
Thank you, Councillor. That was where I was going with my question anyways. Because right now it's on the chart, one back, it's going to be embedded in utility rates. Will that be a varying rate depending on the utility? Like, I'm trying to figure out how we tax supported is around 300 and some million dollars that we collect every year, 320, I believe. Utilities are 205, 210 in that area. I'm probably just pulling numbers out of, where, but they're close-ish, I think. So is it going to be like we need X amount of dollars over the next 20 years? So if we start with a 0.5% across the board, or is it going to be 0.5 on water, 0.2 on electric? I'm just curious of how it's envisioned at the moment.
So those are great questions, Councillor Carlson, and one
and Lloyd
here
is like, I don't have time for this.
So what I'll give you a very piece of it there. For property taxes, like for as of last year here, we're about 200 million in property taxes, 180 million last year, roughly, just over 180 million in taxes, direct taxes. What you're thinking it also is in the tax support side, you are right that a total budget is about $500 million because of between the utility revenues, other revenues that we get, grants we receive, and all those other pieces that come into the municipality. But the question in regards to utility revenues and how we're going to do this down the road here, it probably will be different by each utility. And the reason why I say that is the asset structure and the needs in the future will be different. So one of the ways that we could look at this is the work that's being done by the asset management team, and looking forward, how much money do we think we're going to have to replace over a certain period of time, and what money do we need to have that? Now, obviously, there's a piece of you wouldn't save every single cent, just like we do on the tax side, coming from current ratepayers. It's some piece you pay now, and there's some piece you pay later. And that's going to be the trick as we start looking into it, is how much we do. And then council of that time is going to have to, when we go to the next operating budget, is going to have to make a decision, is that how much affordability is it? How much can we put away to build for the future? It's similar to everybody on their savings accounts or even their RRSPs. How much can you do to save up for, say, in the tax-free save account for your next car versus going out and getting a whole loan? So the idea behind this is to save interest costs. It's also to have some of that money available so it's not a massive jump up in steps going along. So I don't have the answer for you today and the exact percentage of what it'll look like. Some of that is the work we're doing on the asset management side, and we're trying to figure out that balancing. And then between, obviously Mr. Sanchez and myself and Mr. Brierley, we'll be taking a look at it and then bringing it forward as a recommendation to you for council's consideration. But you are right, it's embedded in the utility rates. And so, as utility rates increase, it would be within that. Currently, there is reserve transfers in our overall that was approved in this budget cycle. Some of that is going into, if you remember, in E12 and E13, the projects we just had come forward, there was a reserve allocation using up all the funds that is already based in that. Well, basically, the pay-as-you-go, it would be looking at the same thing. That amount carries on, but do we need to increase it each year, similar to tax, the tax side where it's going up 0.15 and so forth? Those are some of the things council will have to think about. What is that escalator amount to get us to a reasonable area?
Okay, and thank you for that. Would this fund be, I'm wondering how to phrase this, transferable or applicable if it's a percentage of each utility that goes into a fund? Could that fund be used in totality for wastewater, even though part of it was collected from electricity? Because I'm thinking no.
And I would agree with you.
Okay.
So on that, it has to be specific to each utility.
Now,
Set different rate payers, and specifically on electric, the Alberta Electric Utility Commission has certain things and certain requirements of how that reserve works. So that's also why you're seeing on the electric one, we're not talking about electric pay-as-you-go, because they have their whole other policy and how electric is being done and how electric has to be funded on that. So it has to be within the individual reserve. That's why I'm saying it could be different between the two of them, because water and wastewater, we know we have large pieces coming up. Waste services may be different, where we don't have as much as soon that we have to deal with.
Was there any thought, rather than it being embedded in utility rates, just adding like they do at the airport? When you go to the airport, you pay,
baggage fee?
well, no, you pay $10 for the pleasure of using the airport
facility.
because it's a maintenance and an enhancement, it's a capital. If it was a line item on every utility bill that said for pay-as-you-go utilities, not specific to that utility, would that be a way around it? So that you could use the money for the projects that are necessary, not necessarily for what they have been collected.
So that is an option we could consider and look at. I know what you're talking about, the airport improvement fees that you see in different areas, and they do it very specifically by each. Each airport has their own, depending on the runways and things that are going on for that authority. We could take a look at the structure of how we come up with the percentage and how we show it on and even on billings. But I'd need to work with both Mr. Sanchez and Mr. Hillier in regards to what can be done on billings and also what's allowable in those areas and that. But it's something we can take a look into. At this stage here, what we're doing is we're bringing forward to do the work, and we understand that we're looking at how much. First step is to how much do we think and how soon do we think we need it? And how can we, frankly, smooth out some of the costs over a period of time to help so we're not having this massive step up of an increase in one period of time on it there. But the mechanism of how we do it on the billing and so forth you're getting to, well, that's interesting. There's some other different ways we can look into there as well.
Thank you, Madam Chair.
And a reminder that we're looking at the policy today, the overarching, not necessarily all the details have to be in place today, if we do approve this to go forward. But you like the details. Councillor Schmidt-Rempel, go right ahead.
So that was actually going to be my question, Mr. Matthews. We are seeing some gaps then in the policy because we do not yet have a percentage of what we're looking at for that pay-as-you-go program for the utility transfers. Those are still things that will be worked on. So this policy is going to come back to us again. Do you have an estimated time as to when we might be seeing this policy again with those details in it?
Well, yes and no. So yes, I think some of the details on it will have to go to the next operating budget. So I can say that pretty comfortable that this will be a 2028 piece, which will be in 2027. Some things could come, yeah, exactly. Some things could come back earlier than that in regards to, for example, the amount that we need to look at is the total pressure on different utilities, and then some strategies around with council members and what we think could be ways of, different percentages to build towards a pay-as-you-go program. And what's the cap? Like, how far do you want to go between current and future ratepayers? And that's always a discussion point to have as well. That probably could maybe come back in later part of 2026, but that here again is tied to our work on asset management plans and so forth. The real date is in the 2027 period when we're trying to set the rates for the 2028 to 2031 operating budget.
Right, but those would need to come back anyway for council.
All those have to come back to
all that
council.
Discussion. Okay.
That's right.
But when I look at in the policy, specifically with regards to the reporting, and that's the last page of the policy, we can expect then that a summary of the pay-as-you-go program will be included in the operating budget with details of the pay-as-you-go capital requirements being included in the capital budget. So that those sorts of things will be separated out so that council can see what's funded by pay-as-you-go under operating and capital in the next two budgets.
That is correct.
Okay, thank you very much.
So, Mr. Matthews, just some overarching questions. Essentially, we've had this program 30-some years. This is putting a governance stamp over top of it with a policy and agreeing to expand it so it's not just in the tax, it's in utilities as well.
That is correct.
So this is something we have been working with for a very long time. You mentioned the benefit to the corporation is saving interest, which is also a benefit to the community. What other benefits to the corporation have you seen from using this program for 30 years?
Well, I think one of the biggest benefits here too is it has another stable funding stream for council to make decisions on. One of the things that council has really, this has facilitated and great forward thinking by councils is that it allows a certain portion to be allocated to community versus transportation, for example. So not everything goes to a transportation project, not everything goes to a community project. So there's some pieces we've done. Now, keeping in mind that may be further things we have to look at and how it's being broken out in the future, but there's been some real benefits from the point of view of serving all the needs of the community instead of just necessarily one infrastructure area. I think the biggest thing too is that what we were facing back in 1992 and so forth was declining funding from the provincial governments and other levels of governments.
That will never happen again.
That will never happen again. And also on top of it, that we had large amounts of debt. And so what they rightfully did was build a program that helped us reduce that. And in fact, at one point in time, we came down to zero tax-supported debt. And then, of course, we have the Cavendish Centre, but the same thing, we were able to do that piece using this without having to increase the rates for that, at least for the debt. So for the debt payments itself, there was that debt payment that we were able to do inside of the existing capacity components. Yes, it did meet trade-offs for council because obviously they had to pick that project over some others to get those. But as you can see coming up, there's a real, in my opinion, hope for the future in regards to what can be done in our community programs because we have that white space returning so that we can either fund it directly as a grant internally to ourselves or use it for a debt payment to build something big on it too as well. So there's actually some really good benefits there. I'd also say that's a great reason why council last December added another $1.2 million to it because not only is it paying off back to our reserve, having to pay off that loan, but on top of it, what it allows us to do is you got another $1.2 million injected ongoing He said, as long as council wants to keep it there for this. So it's actually helped with the escalation in costs and other things the community needs.
So here's to seeing more white space on that graph as we go ahead.
That's right.
The other thing about this is when we look at municipalities, not just in Alberta, but across North America, one of the greatest things they are focusing on is an infrastructure debt. Like the infrastructure that communities have to have, and it's often the thing that is not getting funded, right? We'll save money and push it to the next council and the next council. Does this program stop us from being one of the communities that does it in a significant way?
I would say yes, and then here's the reason. I've talked to some of my peers, and I won't say which peers, but they're very envious that the City of Lethbridge has this program. A lot of times we speak to them, my counterparts, and they're the problem is trying to build one. It's very difficult to build up capacity inside of your operating budget to actually have that built in to do this. Because we've done this, though, it helps us in infrastructure because we have ongoing programs, whether it's lane maintenance, whether it's pathways, whether it's arts programs and so forth that consistently receive funding that we don't have to worry about in the same way. Council could always make a difference of how they want to allocate inside of there, but that's council's decision, and it's within your dollars that's already within the operating budget to manage. So it's a really strong program, and frankly, an envy across the province.
And in general, this is a program that we're just expanding, and we owe it a debt to councillors who were very forward-thinking back in the 90s, but we brought in the asset management. In general terms, is asset management the philosophy about how we spend the money? And this the mechanism about how we make sure the money's there to spend?
Yes, so I would think that's a good way of stating it there, Councillor Crowson, in regards to that. This actually gives us the how or the funding side of it for how we're going to do all that work. So yes, I would agree with you there.
Okay, Councillor Carlson.
Madam
I thought
Chair.
you were leaving. No?
I was. One last question. On item B 1.5, it says, pay-as-you-go will be administered in accordance with current policies, blah, blah, blah. Are those the sections where it outlines where the dollars from each different fund can be spent? Like, there is right now, it is impossible, or it's not recommended that council spends pay-as-you-go tax dollars to support a utility. Is that something council could do? I'm wondering, are there other checks and balances? Does the MGA or anything say we can't? I think we pretty much can if we want to.
So in that regard, it's not necessarily, both the same things aren't equal. So i.e., we don't usually we don't spend utility dollars and tax supported. Could you spend tax supported on it? Yeah, technically, I think council could. Yeah. And if you look at when we do borrowings, the example in that is when you do a borrowing, even for a utility, if the utility couldn't pay for it, council has a requirement to raise taxes to cover that. Yeah. It's one of the things on the standard components on when we fill out the ACFA. So technically you could. I wouldn't recommend ever using tax-supported dollars to fund a utility. It's different, taxpayers versus ratepayers, and so we always never try to cross paths on it. Now, other municipalities have different philosophies on that.
Gotcha.
Answers your question?
I think so. Thank you.
Seeing nobody else in the queue, I'm going to go to the motion, which I do have from Councillor Carlson. CC 78 pay-as-you-go policy. Be it resolved that the Governance Standing Policy Committee recommend that Council 1. Adopt CC 78 pay-as-you-go policy as provided in Attachment 1, and 2. Direct administration to return to City Council through the Economic and Finance Standing Policy Committee to bring any pay-as-you-go initiatives requiring operating budget changes to be submitted to future operating budget deliberations. Now, just so everybody's aware, this will be coming to the September meeting of Council because the next meeting next week, there's no way to get this ready. So if there is, I know there was a couple questions that we directed to Mr. Matthews that would give him time if he needed to find answers for them before it comes forward. And the number 2 is open-ended because it is based on when certain things are done and have to come to those ones. So we can't give a date to those. But Councillor Carlson, it is your motion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just thank you, Mr. Matthews and your team for the work preparing this and explaining it so well. Unless there's other questions or debate, I will call for the vote.
Question's been called. All in favor? Passes unanimously, and we are adjourned. Thank you all. I know. I don't like breaking promises when I say we'll be done by 3. Did you say 3? I promised Mr. Barley we'd be done by 3, if we could.